Okay, well on.
All right, and welcome to Mythical Monster Investigations, episode 19, where we are going to be looking over Medusa. Now, when it comes to Greek mythology, if Hercules is the single most famous hero of Greek mythology, then hands down the most famous monster of Greek mythology is Medusa. While many people remember monsters like the Hydra and other things that Hercules faced, when they think of Greek monsters independent, they often think of Medusa. And for good reason, which we're going to explore in this one today. There is a surprisingly large amount to cover, so let's dive right on into this. Now, there is something that they. Now, one thing that we have in common with Medusa today, as the ancient Greeks did, is that her image is everywhere. The Greeks had images of Medusa everywhere you can imagine. They had them on temples, they had them on doorways, they even had them over stoves, which we'll get into why later. Now, while Medusa is undoubtedly famous, being in various different Hollywood movies and book series, television series, it's surprisingly the average person has a very limited knowledge of Medusa. In fact, mostly they just know two things. One, that her gaze turns people to stone, and two, she was slain by Perseus. Zed, as the more common person between us two oddballs, like that's about your information on Medusa, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, so that's how much an average person knows on Medusa. Now, Medusa's story is odd to say the least, both in terms of mythological premise and in terms of historical culture and accuracy. And we're going to have to tackle this myth. And to start out, we're going to have to say Medusa herself is actually not supposed to be a monster. Now, many people refer to her as the Medusa, but in fact, Medusa is not a species. Medusa is her name. Her actual species is a gorgon,
Yeah.
which is a creature with snake-like hair who can turn men into stone. Which there is more to that description, but we're going to get into it later. But she is a gorgon with a name. Now, to be fair, her two sisters did have names as well, but we're not going to be covering them, mostly because there's actually not a lot to cover about them.
Most people don't even know their names.
Most people don't even know Medusa had a sister. Most people don't
Two
even know that Medusa had two sisters.
sisters. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's two of them.
and
Um,
even fewer know that she's a Gorgon. But so
Even
we're
fewer
going to
know
cover that
that
a little
there's
bit.
two version of her at least two major version of her stories that people refer to.
Yes, and we're going to look into them today. So I'm not going to lie, her story makes her a very tragic figure.
Yes.
And also, honestly, also after hearing about her story, not only is she a tragic figure, her story is fairly unfair, to be honest. Like, super unfair.
So
Okay.
there is
Um,
debate on how unfair. I've heard another version of the ending. Well, it ends the same, but I heard another interpretation on it that make it seem like she had a good ending with her death.
okay. Well, throw that in there after I like go over these two. I'll remind you about it. You can
Okay.
throw it in there. Okay. So according to myth, Medusa was the youngest of three sisters, which her sisters, who did have names, are Setheno and Uriel, or Uriel, whatever. Her sisters were actually immortal Gorgons, while Medusa actually was born a normal and very beautiful woman, which was strange. And it is strange when you think about it, but we don't actually question it. Um, the three Gorgon sisters, as they would later be called, were the offspring of two deities. Their parents were the god Porcyrus and the goddess Seto, Keto, who were also credited with the birth of many supernatural monsters, making the very beautiful Medusa the oddball of her family.
Should be noted they're both sea gods,
Yes, they are both sea gods,
which will
both
play a
marine
part
type
later
gods.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, and well, with literal monster makers for parents and two sisters that were said to embody the very ugliness of sin, Medusa's beauty was definitely bizarre, and also, most definitely, a gift from the gods. Now, the stories agree that Medusa was once very beautiful. However, the myth branches out a bit with how exactly she got to her more famous Gorgon appearance. Now, of the two accounts on how Medusa was turned into a Gorgon like her sisters, the first and the most infamous of the tellings involved the god Poseidon. Now, Poseidon, of course, was the god of the sea, earthquakes, and other things. He was one of the big three major gods of Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades.
And he
And
hated Athena.
he hated Athena and also Poseidon. As you'll find out, while Zeus is often referred to as a cheating dick, Poseidon was also a dick.
He was
Like,
rapey.
which we're going to find out. As mentioned, Medusa was very attractive. And so attractive, she actually caught the eye of Poseidon, the god of the sea. And while she was worshipping at the temple of Athena, Poseidon basically arrived and raped Medusa in front of Athena's altar. When the goddess Athena discovered this, she acted accordingly and cursed Medusa because how dare she be raped in her temple, and turned her into a hideous monster who basically would be cursed to live alone forever, as anyone who looked at her would be turned to stone. So, again, basically, the goddess Athena blamed Medusa for being raped in her temple, which, if she had been raped anywhere else, apparently would have been fine. It was the fact that she was raped in her temple that was the problem. Seems fair. What do you two think?
So I've heard different variation of that, where she, in one variation, she was a priestess of Athena's,
Yes.
and she ran to the temple for safety and got raped in there by Poseidon. I think I've heard another variation where she was never a priestess and she was never even raped.
That's
And
the
it
second one,
wasn't
which we'll go on to in a minute.
okay. Then in that case, I'll refer to another one where it said that Poseidon, it wasn't rape, it was consensual sex, and it took place in the temple, which caused Athena to curse her. Um, that was
Still
an
a little extreme.
no, it's still a little bit extreme, but that one also makes sense because to give context on why Poseidon and Athena hate each other, it's because of the city of Athens. Originally, Athens didn't have a name, and Poseidon wanted it to be called, I believe the name was Poseidonia, if memory serves correctly. Um,
That's
and
a horrible name
no,
for a
it was a
city.
horrible name. It was a very bad name. But I may be butchering it, but I remember it had Poseidon in the name. It was like Poseidon something. And
No, I think
basic,
that's right. It's still a horrible
it
name.
was a horrible name. Yeah, they
Yeah.
were smart to go with Athena. So basically, I guess a short little side story. Um,
No, go ahead.
Poseidon shows up to what will be Athens and say, if you worship me and name your city after me, I will see to it that all the seas, that you will always be able to get fish from the sea. And he struck his trident down, and out came I believe, a fountain. And he was like, pray to this fountain before you go off to sail, and you will always have safe travel. And then Athena shows up, and she strike her blade down and say, no, worship me and name the city after me, and I will give you, and this tree, your city will become a beacon of knowledge, and this tree that just grew is an olive tree. You'll be able to get light to light your nights, and you'll be able to harvest olive from it to feed yourself. And the people decide to hold a vote. Um, and all the guys voted for Poseidon because they like to sail and they like to get fish, but all the women voted for Athena because they worked at home. So having thanks to having actual lamp oil and olives was pretty useful for them. And they couldn't decide. At this point, Athena and Poseidon was about to come to blows. Zeus intervened. He called a council of the gods. They also held a vote, and it was still a tie. But because Zeus abstained because he was overseeing the whole trial, the guys were outnumbered, so they lost. Athena won. Um, Eventually, Poseidon came to peace with the city of Athens, but he never forgave Athena.
That sounds right.
And last case is when the gods rebelled against Zeus and tried to overthrow him. Athena and Poseidon almost came to blows again because Athena felt she should have been the one to take over because he was the successor of Zeus. But Poseidon felt he should be the one to take over because he felt he was the next strongest.
Which I think is true.
Yet Athena was willing to challenge him multiple times. So that
Yeah,
speaks
we're
volumes
going
for
to
me.
find out a little bit about Athena more on, but yeah, no, and that is true. So basically, so again, as Shadow Fox said, Athena and Poseidon did not like each other. So any degradation in her temple was something that was going to piss off Athena. Yet, again, Athena punished Medusa. Now, experts of this period have explained this rather unjust punishment as a reflection of the male dominated culture of ancient Greece and how women were not really valued. Now, I have a little bit of issue with this. Now, while it is true that women were basically second class citizens during this time, it's not like they weren't valued. They did have value on them, and fathers were actually tasked with protecting their daughters. Now, while they don't have a direct word for rape, as in the English word for rape actually won't come around till the 14th century and actually comes from an old French term meaning rapper or raper, which means to seize. Um, the word rape then comes from rapier, which means seize, or carry off by force or
And
abduct.
and that's where
Simple
we
enough.
get where people debate on whether Hades raped or just eloped with Persephone.
Yes. So that's the thing. But Greece did actually have laws and um, consequences for any sexual assault on women, as fathers no, I had that right, strove to protect their daughters. And that's why Greek women often lived with their families until they were married. It was to protect them. Because if a woman was raped, she was seen as defiled and she actually was not allowed to get married. And if she was if she was a priestess, raping a priestess, that was punishable by
They were
death.
supposed to remain virgins.
Yes. So it's I don't think it's fair to say that just male domination means they didn't care about women, punish the women for being raped. Like, no, that doesn't sound right.
I
And remember, this is specifically with a god and goddess. More than likely, I think a better thing is that Athena couldn't actually do much to Poseidon because even though she may have challenged him, he's still the frickin' god of the sea. He probably could kick her ass.
I think it was more they didn't want to piss off Zeus.
That too. Either way, Athena's not going to be able to do much to Poseidon, is the main point. So, and also it's the fact that Poseidon is a male deity, and in the Greek times, he was seen and supposed to have many sexual conquests. So it was in fact Medusa's fault for catching the god's eye. Again, seems fair.
Well, one thing to note is Athena, besides being the goddess of knowledge and defensive warfare, she was also known for a third attribute. She was always a virgin. She
Yeah,
her remaining virtuous and in terms of virginity was something that was very heavily a huge characteristic of hers in the sense of like Aphrodite at one point even says that we can't have another god or goddess who is not who can reject our powers. because Aphrodite could never get her to fall in love or become smitten. The closest he ever got was messing with Hephaestus to think that Athena had something for him.
Yeah, that was a weird story.
That was a very weird story. We won't get into that one.
Yeah, let's not go into that one.
We won't
I
get
know
into
which
that
one you're
one.
talking about. That is a weird story.
No, but
We can do that another day.
to get on the point of her being essentially a virgin was super like highly regarded, and that was specifically required of all of her priests. Her priestess being deflowered was seen as a huge offense. I mean, that was, I'm pretty sure if a guy actually did rape a priestess of Athens, that would that would be death right there. I'm pretty sure.
Yes, it would be. It would be like they regard you could not touch these women. On a side note, I've never actually thought about before. Like, would that mean that Priestess to Aphrodite was just a giant brothel?
You know, so well, funny enough, I have actually looked into this.
I've never thought about it, to be honest.
It kind of seemed like not a brothel because the brothel implied that you had to pay, but it seemed to be yeah, it seemed from what I've heard, the rumors that I heard, it seemed like it was just they were very free spirited. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, no, I could imagine. Just it's a funny thing when you think about it.
Because if I recall, that wouldn't be the only what cult you could call it of priestess who was very risque. I believe the cult
Oh,
of the
not even close.
I believe the cult of the dead also did something like that as well.
There have been many cults throughout history who've done risque things. I mean, Rasputin was part of a cult. Well, he was part of a secular branch of Christianity where they believed if they sinned as much as possible, they could ask for forgiveness for their sins much more, which would bring them closer to God. Yeah.
So it's
Look, there's things get weird sometimes. Okay, that's what we're going with. So
but yeah,
moving on before we get too close to brothels.
yeah, but no, I would basically say I find that whole argument saying oh it's a main oppression. No, I call complete BS on whoever came up with
Oh,
that theory.
ditto. Yeah,
I
no,
think
ditto.
that
I'd say
sound
that's
that sound like I mean I agree it's very sexist what happened to Athena and no matter
to
which
Medusa.
version of the story you hear it always seemed like there's only one variation I heard where it sounded like Athena was justified to turn Medusa into a Gorgon monster and that one was one where he straight up says he was more beautiful than Athena.
That's actually one I was going to cover after this.
Yeah. So that's the only one I can think of. All the other version, it seemed like he was either had sex with Poseidon or someone near
Yeah,
or by her temple.
yeah, pretty much. But yeah, no, I say the male dominance I think is BS. But going into it, the second interpretation, as Shadow of Rock stated, is not much better. Um, Basically, it has Athena cursing Medusa because Medusa boasted of her beauty and said she was more beautiful than Athena. So Athena turned her into an ugly Gorgon, which again seems like a very harsh punishment for a pretty girl being vain, especially considering Athena's an immortal goddess who will remain beautiful forever, where Medusa's looks would eventually fade.
And Athena's pretty fucking petty.
Yeah,
Well,
so she's very petty. And now, regardless of the version, Athena comes off as a complete bitch.
see, there's another story where she straight up do challenge and turn a mortal into a monster because they say something about her. So you specifically have another one.
Wait, was it say something, or was it the Loom story where
The
she
loom.
looms better than her? Yeah,
I'm regarding the loom story, but you gotta admit that was also very petty.
yeah, that's my point. No matter what, she comes off as a petty bitch. It's like, hey, I challenge you to a contest. Okay, I won. Monster, like, bitch. I mean, Zed, back us up here. Does this not sound like her being a petty bitch?
You didn't hear me denying anything.
Thank you. So, yeah.
I'm
And-
sorry. I'm of the impression that all the impression that all gods are petty bitches at moments, most of the time.
Especially the Greek gods. Like, literally the only decent Greek god was Hades, the god of the underworld.
Gee,
Who,
no wonder I like him so much.
yeah, no, like, he was the only one who was...
Actually, that is fair.
even
If you had to
if you
ask me what
include
Greek
the
god I like
abduction...
most, it probably is Hades.
Yeah, because even if you include the adoption of Persephone, like, not a misinterpretation, he still does the least amount of damage to the mortal realm.
Hestia, the goddess of, I believe that was the goddess of homes.
Did
If
she actually have any stories, though?
exactly, that's why I know she didn't do anything bad.
Okay, well then can we count that?
There you go. So
But
any
see,
goddess or god with a
she is a
story is
major
usually
Olympian
horrible.
god, though.
That's fair.
She is literally, I believe she is the older sister of Zeus, if I'm not mistaken.
The older... Well, Zeus was the last born. They're all older than her.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think she was I think she was the oldest out of all the Olympic, because I think she was the firstborn. Was it Hestia? I believe.
No, well, no, Hades is the oldest brother.
No,
But I
but the
don't know
oldest
about the
child.
daughters. Like, what? I thought Hades was born first, but to be fair, I don't know. I didn't look that up. I thought Hera was the oldest female, though.
No, because I think it was either Hestia or Demeter.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know. I didn't look up the ages of the original 12. So I know Hades is the oldest brother, because that's why
Yes.
people are saying he got sidelined by the whole drawing lots thing, which he totally did. Okay, well we can look it up another
Yeah.
time. We're getting off on a tangent.
Okay, I was right. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, Zeus.
Really, Hera's the youngest sister.
Yes. Okay, I thought so.
I'll admit, I didn't know. Like, I never bothered to really look that up. Hades is the oldest brother, though, right? I am right about
Yeah,
that.
he's the oldest brother. Hestia is the oldest.
Okay.
I
Huh.
thought so. I'm like, yeah, Hestia.
I legitimately thought Hades was born first.
Yeah, because I always thought it was strange that Hestia was the oldest and one of the most honored goddess, but there's no stories about her.
Probably for good reason. It's
Yeah.
probably why, it's not so different from today. Let's face it, any celebrity who's actually a decent person, you never hear any stories about. Think
Oh,
about it.
and she was the other virgin goddess.
If that figures. Where was I? Oh, right. Okay, we got off on
I don't know. We needed to
okay,
take like a right, and we ended up taking like 5 lefts. So
Okay, so yeah, so basically, whichever version, Medusa got turned into a gorgon. Anyone who looked at her turned into a statue, basically. And if that wasn't bad enough, she was then sent to an island to live by herself in eternal solitude, basically waiting for someone to come across her and be turned to stone. Now, there is some variation in the myth where it's either anyone who looks upon her will turn to stone, or anyone she looks at. I think the original is that anyone who looks upon her, and anyone who looks at was later a Hollywood version. So, but basically, you looked at her, you looked at her directly, you were going to turn to stone, because that is a direct part of the myth. But besides having to live on an island by herself, unlike her sisters, Medusa remained mortal. So she could be killed. And she was ultimately killed by the demigod Perseus. Which, that sucks. But her story doesn't end after she's killed. First of all, if I remember correctly, when Perseus does lop off her head, from the blood of Medusa's neck springs Pegasus, the winged horse, if I remember correctly.
Yes, Pegasus and one other monster.
Wasn't it those scorpion things?
It was either scorpions or it was it wasn't Echidna.
No,
Was it?
Echidna's the mother of all monsters.
Yes. Give me a second. Oh, the horn dragon. Amphibiena or something like that.
Oh, and also Chrysaor.
Yeah.
So some monsters were also born from her neck. which, yeah, okay, cool. Pegasus would be seen later. Then, afterwards, Perseus would take up her head and used in the famous Clash of the Titans movie, Perseus used her severed head to defeat the Kraken, which was not part of the original myth, I'm afraid. He actually used the head to defeat a king who was going to marry his mother, which, cool, I guess. But he used the head for other conquests, and I'm not going to lie, the final fate of Medusa's head was particularly unjust, in that it basically went to adorn the shield of Athena. So, yeah, I think that's definitely a tragic story. Like the most famous version is basically she gets raped, turned into a monster, killed by a demigod, and then she gets put on the shield to basically act as an ornament for the very woman who cursed her for being raped. I mean, that all sounds a little unfair to me. Like, that's a horrible story.
So again, I've heard one variation, one retelling of it where they try to put a nicer spin on the ending.
Yeah, I'm noticing you're emphasizing one.
Well, yes, one, and I think this was more from the storyteller who was trying to do this than the actual myth itself.
Yeah, I would think so.
For that one, they went with the version of the story where Athena was a priestess of where Medusa was a priestess of Athena, and they made it seem as though she was a devout priestess to Athena, which, depending on the myth, yeah, that can be fairly backed up. Until and that even after she was cursed and became a Gorgon, or cursed to look like a monster, more like a Gorgon, she still remained somewhat
Loyal.
stalwart, yeah, in her behavior, because I can't
Or,
remember the island she take place on, but they claim that she.
uh, yeah, I don't remember. I'm sorry.
But I do often remember that the classic Titans show her in what appears to be a temple.
Yes.
And I can never find any myth to validate that she took up home in a temple.
There isn't. Temple just looks cooler for
Yeah,
cinema.
I think it's just temple look cooler. But they always that version I saw they went with, okay, she took shelter in the temple because it looked cooler, and that she continued to pray to Athena while she was in that temple, and her being killed by Perseus was essentially the only way to remove the curse. Was the only way to undo what Athena had done was through death. So, in Perseus killing her, that was essentially freeing her from her savage barbaric curse that was placed upon her. And her being placed onto the shield was in honor of her rather than so much in, as a trophy.
Yeah. So just like witches, if you kill them, their souls will be saved.
Yeah, they went with that belief. That was the only one I ever saw where they actually tried to say it was a good one.
I know it's not much better.
It's not much better. Look, I was trying. How many stories do you find that was better?
None. That's why I didn't bother mentioning it. Uh, okay, but that is the tragic story of Medusa. And before we start taking a deeper dive into her already rather
It
depressing story, let's lighten things up a bit and play Who is That Monster Pokemon? Which I understand that, Zed, you actually had some trouble with this one.
Yeah, because there's no humanoid Pokemon with snakes on its head that petrifies things.
I mean, that sounds like a you thing, like a you problem, but
Just put Arbok on the damn screen. Arbok is the closest one, being a snake whose main theme is using the move Glare in order to paralyze its enemies, which is the closest thing to petrification.
That's fair.
Also, it being a snake, Medusa would definitely use it. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if there was fan art of Medusa with Arboks in her hair instead of normal snakes.
Okay, you realize you might have just started an entire new, like, creepy-ass art function thing?
Good.
Man, DeviArt does things, and then if DeviArt does stuff, then we get that weird Rule 34 crap.
Well, that's the rule of the internet. That's gonna happen regardless.
You realize there is someone out there who's Rule 34, the snake that is currently on screen, right?
Oh, 100%.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Which I find creepy. Man, I'm sorry, but you know, some of the stuff is just creepy. It's like, you gotta wonder who the hell thinks of this stuff.
Okay, argument.
You know
I'm
what?
just
Never
going to
mind.
say.
I don't want to know who thinks of this stuff.
I'm just gonna say, Rule 34. You've heard the phrase "holy fucking shit."
Yes.
Rule 34 made it real. Holy fucking shit was like I did not think that was legit, and then someone was like Rule 34 for everything on the internet, and I'm like, well, shit, literally, holy fucking shit.
God, that reminds me of that dumb comic I saw. It was basically a man is in heaven and he's talking to an angel, and he's pointing out things going, "What is that?" He's like, "That's the holy cow, and that the holy barn." And the man goes, "Holy shit!" He goes, "To the holy outhouse. To the holy outhouse you go." It's not a good comic. It just reminds me of it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not that many Pokemon that really, would fit with Medusa of.
Which does surprise me. Like I really would think that Pokemon would have jumped at some kind of Gorgon-like creature.
Well, no, because they're based off of yokai, and the only yokai there's plenty of yokai about women who had tragic fate and became monsters, but they're represented as different things, like the what do you call it? The winter the snow woman, the Yumi,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. The one with the long neck.
Yuki. Sorry, the Yuki. No, not them. The Yuki is a woman who
Oh, is
looked
that the
like
vampire-like one?
the one that looked like ice.
Oh, yeah, that one.
The snow woman is what
Okay,
they call.
in my defense, Japan has a lot of demons.
I mean, there's
So many.
So I'm trying to think of. There's not that like there's plenty of ones that met tragic fates that would be almost Greek tragedy like fate, but there's none that became a monster that turned people to stone. So it only makes. And I don't think Pokemon have done a Greek. No, they definitely haven't done a Greek region yet.
No, they have not done a region based off Greece at all.
Oh, Rome, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
So yeah, they've never done. They should do that for a region because there's plenty of monsters to make a Pokemon region off of there, but
Fair enough.
then
Well-
you know what? Then the starter type would have to be like a Medusa type.
That'd be fun.
They got the Hydra, they got the Medusa, they got the Gorgon, and Scylla for that way they can have all multi-headed Pokemon for the starters.
There you go. I mean, the Chimera technically falls into that because it's supposed to have the head of a goat on its back.
Yeah, I mean, again, Pokemon well, you know what, Game Freak, we'll sell it to what's the competitor? Power World,
Just
Why?
because Pokemon been losing their touch. Time to move over to the new one, Power World.
what do you mean they've been
Been
losing their
losing their
touch? They
touch.
lost their touch in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, isn't there a Pokemon that's an actual pie?
Yeah, yes.
I?
The apple.
Oh, Appleton, right.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
an
Its
apple
name
pie.
is Appleton?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Like I said, Power World's time to take. It's your time to take over.
It's probably been that time for a while.
It's really.
Sometimes they need to just let franchises die.
It wouldn't be bad if they still had some emotion for it, but it seemed like
Going through the motion?
they're just printing out. They're just trying to print money at this point.
Sounds about right. Well, okay. Let's get back into tragedy. So, when it comes to the origin of Medusa, it gets a little complicated. For one thing, you won't really necessarily find it in her past, but more of the cultural influence. And I don't actually mean the cultural influence of modern day, because while she is a big cultural influence in modern day Hollywood, with even a recent remake of Clash of the Titans, which I'm sorry was not very good. It wasn't bad. It lacked heart.
You angered
I think.
so many people by saying that. I know it. Just someone you
Yeah,
angered.
I know, without a doubt. But again, it's not a bad movie. It it lacks. I don't know what it lacks. It's too
It was too
depressing,
Hollywood, in
maybe.
my opinion, because
Maybe that's it. Though to be fair, I actually really liked its sequel, Wrath of the Titans, which I don't know why. I liked Wrath of the Titans. I thought that was a much better movie. I watched that movie more than once. But the remake of Clash of the Titans, I did not like.
and that's not the remake. That's the original that I like.
Yeah, I like the original. Like, it's campy, but the
and
campiness makes it fun.
and while they didn't fight the Kraken, they did fight Cetus was in the original myth. I think
Yes.
that's what they based the Kraken off of.
Yeah, I believe so. So, I mean, it works out.
Cetus was a giant sea serpent that came out, but
On a side note, there is also a part of the myth where Perseus is said to fly over to Atlas holding up the sky and turn him to stone.
which make the
Which,
mountain Mount Atlas, I believe, or
well, I was going to say makes no canonical sense since Hercules is supposed to be the great or grandson of Perseus,
yes.
and Hercules was known for tricking Atlas into getting the golden apple. So a little bit of a time frame there,
So
but
I have theories for that.
well, do remember the Greeks like to change their stories various times. Like the stories of Hercules, there's like 20 different versions. There's even one version where he actually went to the garden himself that he had Atlas go to and fought the dragon who was guarding it there, got the apples himself. So my point is Greeks like to change the myths, but go ahead. What's your theory?
My theory is that the petrification doesn't last that long on beings such as Titans and Olympian gods. That
Right.
eventually they can break free of it.
It might, but there were definitely things that could kill the Olympian gods.
It
That
wa-
was made clear.
yes, I don't know if Medusa's head was one of them though,
That was never made clear.
because that's the thing. It does kill Cetus, which was a sea serpent.
Right.
That was a creature of one of the gods.
Yes.
And Athena kept it on her shield, but then again, Poseidon, and they never went to blows, but, that's a good question. Would that shield have tipped it in her favor against Poseidon?
Eh, knowing Poseidon, it probably would have given him a massive boner.
That would be an
Anyway.
interesting statue.
Yeah, because there's not enough incest with the Greek gods as it is.
There could always be more.
Clearly. Anyway, so in Hollywood movies like Clash of the Titans, they had Medusa basically with snake hair and the body of a snake, which was done with very cool stop motion, in my opinion. Stop motion's got that phase, but I find the old stop motion kind of interesting. Now, however, in the original myth, Gorgons were actually supposed to be winged creatures with talons, though their snake hair did remain. However, that isn't the most important feature of them. A Gorgon's main image a Gorgon's main attribute was actually focused on her head. especially Medusa, was focused mostly on her face. And this image was everywhere and was basically used as a mythological guard dog. As it was mentioned, it was on kitchen stoves, it was in homes, it was on intruders, it was even put on armor. Most famously, the fresco found of Alexander the Great showed that in his armor, he had on his breastplate an image of Medusa's head. So the image was meant to invoke fear and dread, which is why it was put on armor and also shields. And it would become a staple for many years. In fact, even I think to the modern day, there are some people who still use the Medusa image. So, what Medusa essentially became, or what I should say, a Gorgon became or always was a Greek boogeyman. Um, so, the survival of this myth was actually due to the usage of the image, with the image being basically a demonstration and meaning of impending danger. Now, unfortunately, this also may have kind of corrupted her original story and makes her origin rather difficult to come across. Because on this rare occasion, the name is actually not that helpful in discovering her capabilities. In fact, the attributes instead may give a better look. Because while the snake hair is the most well known feature of a Gorgon, of Medusa, and other monsters, the facial features are the ones that should be looked at the most because there were actually very specific facial features that were associated with Gorgons and with Medusa. And the notable facial features are such as large bulging eyes, a protruding tongue, oftentimes tusks, wounded and puffy cheeks, and a distorted color around the skin. Now, what's interesting is that is not unique to Gorgons or to Greek mythology. There were other bits in various mythologies, other creatures and other deities that had these same traits, such as, oh, I'm going to butcher this, the Fararura.
That was close. That was close enough.
Yeah, I'll take it. Now, this is an Indian deity of the eclipse, which, like Medusa, bears a bloated appearance and has a protruding tongue and bulging eyes and even tusks. Now, another one that has these features is Bes, which is so much easier to say. Bes is an Egyptian god, again, who possesses a protruding tongue and bloated features with bulging eyes, and is also a bit of a dwarf like character, often guarding temples, which we're going to find this theme also. Now, the final one, which is fairly well known, though most people don't even realize they've seen it, is Tana Tia. Tanta Tia?
Yeah, no, that was a closer we could get for that pronunciation.
Yes, and this is the face that's seen in the Mayan calendar. You know, the one that predicted the world would end in 2012, which is not what it said, but, you know, everybody went nuts about it.
It's a coming.
Yeah, it's only a few years late.
It's only 12 years late.
I mean, 12 years, you know,
Look,
clearly.
they died how many years ago? Look, it is cut them some slack. Give them some leeway.
Yeah, I mean, they couldn't even get their own destruction right, but they definitely got the world's destruction right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. To be fair, again, that's not what it says.
No, it's
so
just when the calendar
if you
ended.
study, yeah, if you study the Mayan calendar, we know that's not what it says. We're making jokes. Calm the hell down. You know, there's people who would get mad at us and leave angry comments if they actually watched our videos.
No, it's. I believe the calendar is specifically in there because that's just when the people buying the calendar decide to stop.
I think it was also a mathematical reset. You know, the math
Yeah.
just ended there. It was something to do with the mathematics of the calendar.
Yes, because it would basically. It wasn't. Oh, they predicted the end of the world. It was some. It was like a reason they had to stop because something.
Yeah, and it was also
off.
said a renewal would happen, not the end. So
Yes,
if anything, it
that's
would
the
be renewal.
mistranslation people get. Was it they label that time? I think it was because they came to what they calculate as a renewal or
Yeah.
predict it as a just renewal period
Yes, that's
according
right.
to their mathematical logic or something of how they were doing this calendar.
Yes, which was based a lot on mathematics and stargazing.
Yes.
So yeah, and that's the thing. And this I know will piss off people, but I don't care. It's true. Math isn't perfect.
Oh, you won't hear any debate from me. I think only scientists get pissed off on that statement.
Oh yeah, and oftentimes the scientists who aren't very good.
And the people who are hard number people. Show me the numbers. Numbers are never wrong.
Yeah, right.
I hear that so many times from so many people.
Oh god, it pissed me off so much. It's like, yeah, numbers aren't wrong, but reality doesn't always fit with numbers. And that's the thing. Numbers, for God's sakes, we can't even figure out. We have to literally make up numbers for some of our stuff to work.
Yes.
I isn't real. I is literally the square root of -1, and we made it up because we couldn't figure it out.
I believe Einstein, for one of his relativity formula, he had to make up a value, like some type of integer, to just shove in there so his formula will work. They later found out that there was actually a value, and they found what that value represented.
I don't know that, but I could believe it.
To
Because
valid
mathematicians do that all the time.
Yeah, like I remember that specifically for Einstein was one of his biggest formulas. He regarded as his biggest failure because he had to make a integer to plug into the formula because otherwise it would not work. And he just labeled that integer like x or something. So, as a placeholder.
Yeah.
And eventually scientists found the force that he labeled as X, it actually was a gravitational force that, wasn't discovered till that point, which validated his formula.
Yeah, I can believe that. But that's the thing. Mathematicians do that crap all the time. And unlike Einstein, they're not always right.
Yes.
But yeah, so math isn't perfect. But regardless, so with these three deities, we notice the bulging eyes, the protruding tongue, the slightly bloated features, sometimes tusk, sometimes not. Now, when it comes to their capabilities, purposes, and everything else, most of these deities don't have much in common. But the parallels that can be seen in them are the physical traits, as well as their use of image for the cultural time, many of them being used as guards or symbols of impending dread or doom, something to keep away. For instance, like them being used on stoves. The Medusa head was put on Greek stoves to basically warn children, stay away from the damn stove. Which it's nice to know that some problems just transcend the ages. But these physical traits do have a real life parallel, which has been seen, and that is in corpses, particularly rotting corpses. Now, when we think about rotting corpses, we mostly think of, well, video games, which if anybody's watching on YouTube, I'm guessing that is this AI generated or is this
Yeah,
from a video game?
this was the AI.
This AI
Okay.
generated. Just say YouTube would not let us put an actual rotting corpse on here. Like that would apparently get this channel removed so fast.
Yeah, I took one look at the image archivage I posted. I'm like, yeah, no, there's no way I'm gonna do that one. They definitely are going to flag me with if I post that image, even though.
Yeah, so there was no way that was going. I didn't think so, but it does actually. It fits well with this segment because in the modern world, for a majority of areas, death is kept very separate from people's everyday lives. I mean, nowadays, especially when corpses are viewed, they're not viewed as they were when they died. They're viewed at a funeral or already in a coffin where their bodies have been drained of fluid and they've been made up in order to be presented to loved ones so that they look more like they're just sleeping. Often they're coated in makeup and everything else. So they look very natural and sometimes even doll like, though honestly, as I still find it slightly unsettling with the corpse, but that's just me because of my more artistic capabilities, but that's my problem. But you guys know what I mean. If you two have ever been to a funeral, like, they dress up the body.
Yeah, no, the bodies when a body die, they start to easily start to decompose.
Yeah,
They
that becomes grotesque.
Yeah, depending on how they die will depend on how quickly they may start to bloat. Oh,
Yeah,
depending on the temperature in the area, you know, also depends on how fast the body will start to bloat from the gases within the body.
yeah. Now there are various features, but some of the more common ones that are part of this, as I said, body becomes bloated, which actually pulls back the skin, which in turn causes the eyes to bulge out. The tongue also swells up and starts to protrude from the mouth. And unsurprisingly, mentioning bloating, very pungent odors and toxins can start coming from a rotting corpse, uh, which is a disturbing sight in any era. And I think we actually mentioned some of this in our vampire video when we talked about how some of the bloatedness of corpses could have been confused people for vampires engorging themselves. But it may have also played a part in Medusa's origin. I mean, perhaps, the Gorgon's most famous ability to turn anyone who looked upon them into stone, perhaps it was more metaphorical. Perhaps what it meant was that someone who would see this bloated, decaying body would be petrified with fear. Maybe? I'm asking. Like, generally, like, what do you two think?
Um, because yeah, I have thought about this because the only thing that got me is people would not have been unknowing of death and how a body become bloated and horrified as you just leave it out to decay. And Greek especially because they had plenty of bodies laying out and decaying, and I'm trying to think of their burial ritual. How did they preserve the body? Because I believe they
Well,
did.
do remember that Greeks had a very big thing on death. For instance, they believed you had to bury the body and you also had to bury them with coins to pay the
Yeah,
boatman.
the ferryman.
So, and they had to do this fairly quickly. So, not necessarily would you see a lot of dead bodies lying out. A battlefield, definitely.
Well,
But
battlefield is what I'm referring to because they had a
yes, in a
lot of
battlefield, yes. But um, uh, so this is actually interesting. Like in particular, I was mentioning this was used on stoves to scare away small children and things like that. So when you think about the gods and deities that have these type of features, they often are supposed to give off a sense of dread or a sense of potential danger. They're supposed to be warning figures to be effective guards. So perhaps that's what they're trying to like convey with the Medusa's image is that same fear and dread that could come from someone who sees a rotting corpse for the first time because seeing it for the first time, a body decaying, not one at a funeral, it's even adults, like it can be a little stomach churning, especially the smells. Oh God, the smells.
I
I'm
mean,
sorry, the body is not pretty when it decays. That's why diet and exercise. Keep your body healthy as long as you can because it turns gross.
true, but I'm just think because if it was just bodies, we would expect to see more of it or
Well,
other
that's just
element
it.
in other cultures.
Well, that's just it. We do actually see
Well, I mean,
quite a bit
even
of it in
even
other
more
cultures.
so than because I guess you wouldn't
The
see it in the North because it's too cold in that region. But I don't recall any of it in
Greeks.
but I don't recall any in what would it be not Babylonian Sumerian um with like Gilgamesh and stuff like that. I don't recall any.
No, ancient Sumeria. No, I don't believe so. But to be fair, I haven't looked for particularly potential death gods in Samaria. But
Um,
Sumerian religion is very interesting,
most of
to
theirs,
say the least.
I believe their is it Sumerian? I think their god of death is a female. I believe, if memory serve correctly. Yes, it's a female because Gilgamesh went to I believe Gilgamesh went to the underworld to save another goddess who went down there to visit the goddess of the underworld. So yes, I believe it's a female if memory serve correctly.
Well, yeah,
Um,
and do remember the bloated corpse wasn't always a symbol of death. Like the gods I mentioned, none of them were symbols of death, which is interesting when you think about it.
yeah,
But they were
no,
all used to be kind of guardian things. So they were meant to instill a symbol of fear. Or I not necessarily fear, more of foreboding. Foreboding's a better word.
I'm wondering if it was just their interpretation of their equivalent because I mean it was their boogeyman. I'm wondering if it was just always seen as that was because snakes being a boogeyman like figure is also a reoccurring thing in a lot of myths.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And that's the thing with Medusa is that it's hard to really say where exactly a myth came from. Like, was the image of a Gorgon already popular and then Medusa evolved around it? Or did the myth of the Gorgon come from Medusa?
Because I'm trying to remember, there was a myth for a woman that was half woman, half snake that would eat children. That was a boogeyman, a Lemuria.
I don't
Uh,
think that was Greek.
it was that Greek or was that a different
I don't
one?
think that was. I don't think that was Greek. I mean, it sounds familiar, but I don't
Okay,
think
no,
it
it
was
was
Greek.
Greece. Because it was another lover of Zeus.
Half woman, half snake.
What happened was he was a beautiful woman, lover of Zeus, and Hera cursed her.
Which who is this?
Um,
Like, what's her name?
Lemuria, Lamia.
In Greek mythology?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I knew I wasn't going crazy. Yeah, because he was um now it could have got started. Yeah, Lemuria, a queen of ancient Libya who had an affair
Oh,
with Zeus.
Lamia.
Lamia. Okay, I didn't know how to pronounce it.
Lamia. Okay. Lamia. Got it. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
I didn't know how it would pronounce, but I knew it was a half snake,
I'm
half.
sorry. You were I was thinking Lemuria. What? Okay. Okay. Lamia. Got it.
I didn't know how it was supposed to be pronounced, but I knew it was a boogeyman of like it was always used to frighten children. It was the boogeyman for children.
Yes. She was actually a queen of Libya, if my memory serves me.
Yeah, that's why I said it's the
Yes.
queen of
Yeah.
Libya
Okay.
who
Got it. Sorry. You were making my mind go somewhere way off into like African lore.
no. Well, I mean, there is some African myths that the Greeks actually did mess together, but and that's how we got some Egyptian gods in Africa, Greek god in Egypt, but that's a whole nother story. But no, it was a loss of her
No.
children drove her insane, and in her vengeance, she snatched up any children she could find and ate them. And
Yeah, no, that story now I remember because later on she kind of became a vampire like mythos as her story evolved a bit.
Hera
But yeah,
um,
Hera cursed her.
with insomnia, so she could no longer close her eyes, and was always obsessed with children.
Yes, Hera, another bitch of a goddess.
Yes.
Not all of them, but most of the gods were horrible, as we'll find out.
But I mean, I'm wondering which one came. I'm assuming the face and the myth with Lamia came first because that would explain how Medusa's myth got fused together. Of because Lamia was a boogeyman specifically used to scare children.
Yes, it was, but do bear in mind that Medusa was said to be a gorgon, and gorgons actually were more bird-like than snake-like.
No, I know, but that could explain how it got merged together. Was snake hair, snake body. There is
Yeah.
there's a myth about a female half snake, half woman who was beautiful, and oh, there's also a story of a woman who became a monster with snakeful hair.
True, but remember though, even in classical Greek statues of Medusa, before Hollywood ever had a part, like she was depicted as pretty much human, just with a snake head full of snakes.
No, I know.
But to be fair, that came later on, and it would probably be hard for sculptures to, actually sculpt a snake body. So that probably doesn't mean much when you actually think about it. But it is possible the two myths could have gotten merged at some point. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not exactly sure. That's the problem. Is no one's exactly sure when exactly these myths were created. Is these myths go back to pretty ancient Greece, and that's where the thing, you know, we could say maybe first century, maybe second century, but again, the problem with Medusa's myth is that we're not sure if the Gorgon myth came from Medusa or the Gorgon myth was already around and Medusa later became part of it. So that's where we have some questions. And the thing is, Greeks like to merge their myths. That is something they very much like to do. So it's entirely possible. I mean, they like to merge and like to separate myths. There is a account where they believe that Poseidon and Hades at one time were the same god and later were separated to create two separate beings. So difficult to say, but it's not impossible. Is my point. I'm just like it's unclear where where it could have ended up, but it's not a bad theory. I mean, Limia could have been part of it, especially if the story of Limia was first. So then the question becomes, how did Medusa come into it?
Yeah, I'm just wondering since it seemed like with both these things that are used to kind of ward off or scare children, or in Medusa case, ward off evil, both of them have snakes. And not only that, but if we look at, I believe, Hermes' staff,
Yes.
that also have the snakes, which was a ward for healing. Or
Yes.
in Hermes' case, also, I think making creatures fall asleep as well.
I'm not sure. I always knew
Um,
the twin
the
serpent
the
staff is healing.
the eyes, the creature that had a bunch of eyes that was a monster of Hera. I can't remember its name.
Oh, Argos?
Argos,
Argon?
Argon,
Something like that.
because Hermes hit it with his staff to help to, I believe, kill it, if I remember correctly, or put it
Wait,
into a deep sleep so he could kill it.
I thought the thing was killed by Hercules.
Um, no, because it was unless you're thinking a different one. I'm thinking because the one I'm thinking of, Hera used it to watch over a woman that Zeus turned into a cow to try to hide his affair.
Yes, I'm thinking of a different monster.
Okay, yeah. You're thinking a different one because yeah, no,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of a
because they
different monster.
ultimately
You're right.
became the eyes of a peacock feather. That's how they explain.
Yeah, I remember the Eyes of Peacock pod, so you're right. I'm sorry, I'm thinking of a different monster. There was a monster that Hercules faced with Hera
Similar.
helping it, but that was it had multiple heads, multiple arms, and multiple legs, and Hercules killed it with a poison arrow. Yeah, sorry,
Yes, the
wrong monster.
Hydraeus. Yes,
Yeah, wrong
and I think
monster.
that one was a giant as well, if memory serves correctly.
Yes, it was also a giant, so I'm thinking of the wrong monster. To be fair, there's a lot of monsters in Greek mythology.
There's a
Forgive me
lot.
for getting
Yes,
them.
no, I remember a lot of these because
Yeah, forgive me for getting them mixed up.
Greek mythology is the one the few that I do know of the myths. I can't remember the names all the time, but I can remember the myths very well.
Yeah, I remember the myth now. I just I'm bad with names, so I get the names confused. But yeah, I remember now. 100 eyes, Hera, the eyes of the peacock, and that was also why the peacock became Hera's official bird.
Yes. I'm just
Well,
thinking
it already was. She put it on her official bird because of the monster's faithful service.
because every time I think of a Greek myth, now that I look back on it, snakes always seem to find their way into Greek myth. Hercules strangled two snakes as a baby. Hermes' staff has two snakes on it. Medusa head is full of snakes. Limia was part snake. The the serpent that almost ate Princess Andromeda before Perseus came was a sea serpent. Um, Hydra was a
Well,
multi-headed serpent. Scylla was a multi-headed sea serpent. I
yeah,
think
no,
Greeks had
snakes are
snakes on their heads a whole lot.
okay. To be fair, lots of cultures do have snakes on the brand because snakes symbolize many things. Now, in Greek particular, snakes were symbols of, as you said, medicine, but they were also symbols of wisdom, which goes back much farther than the Greeks. Which actually some argue goes back to stories in the Bible where the serpent gave wisdom to mankind. But snakes are also guardians of the underworld, messengers between the world and above, saying as snakes pop up from below, which is actually something we're going to go over further when we talk about Cerberus, which I think might be our next monster we look into.
Yes. Also,
Yeah,
that's the other thing I forgot about the story of Medusa. The curse that was the way they described the curse as a blessing. So in the
that
story,
no one can hurt her.
yes, Medusa was raped by a man. Being turned into a gorgon meant that no man could ever look upon her with lustful eyes again.
I mean, that seems like a high price to pay, but
It's a
okay.
high price to pay, but that
Although, to be fair, as somebody who has talked with rape victims, I know a few who would actually like that.
yes. Well, that again, the story. Remember the story. The person who told that variant of the story was trying to spin it so Athena wasn't too horrible, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, it could be seen as a blessing if you're trying to keep people from approaching you,
Yeah.
and well, you said the
No,
head of
I can see
Medusa.
his point, though. My main question is, why are you trying to make Athena seem less horrible? She
Ah,
was horrible.
well,
Like,
again, with well, again, with you said that Medusa's head was used as a ward to ward off evil,
that's true. Yes.
and thinking about it, snakes are seeing a snake would keep people from approaching something.
Yeah,
So,
they like I said, they were also symbols of death and destruction. Oddly enough, fertility, rebirth, and renewal because of the snake shedding its skin. So many people thought they were immortal because of that.
well, just
Or,
think about
well,
of a
not that they were immortal, but that was a symbol of immortality because they seemed to shed their self and become new.
well, think about it this way: a beautiful woman with a head of snake like Medusa. So that would have been a in a way that would have been essentially like a almost an oxymoronic of um yeah, that could have been seen as almost a strange symbol of beauty plus danger. So
That could. I'm
maybe
sorry. I just had a very comical thought. Like, what if all of this just stemmed from a beautiful woman having a really bad hair day one day, to where her hair was so tangled it looked like snakes?
well, see, I always thought it was what if
I'm,
what if we're
I'm
just
sorry.
overanalyzing this, and this is
That's
just and
nonsense.
this was just the first pinup girl of the ancient world. Well, that would explain a lot. Do you know how? Look how many pinup girls we put on our planes and stuff.
No, that's true. It is a thought. Like, again, there's lots of different ways this myth could come around. Like Perseus, for instance. Maybe Perseus was a real person, but maybe instead of slaying someone, he actually carried a medallion or a pendant, or even had armor with Medusa's image on it, or a Gorgon's image at the time, and he went off to defeat someone who had a queen named Medusa, or a town of Medusa, or something, and the myth could have started from there. Or maybe he went and killed an evil person or an evil queen, or perhaps a good queen. I mean, it's ancient Greece, named Medusa, brought back her head, and it turned into something overbloated that maybe actually scared the king and Perseus myth to death, and maybe that's how that started. I mean, that's the thing. There's lots of different possibilities. And again, the Greeks love to merge their myths. See, that's a lot of problem with these myths is that many of these cultures would change the mythology to actually suit certain cultural deviations of the time or certain things that the leaders would want. Samaria in particular, I mentioned because Samaria, they actually have evidence of two regions in Samaria that were around at the same time, two separate temples, like very close to each other, and both of them had different accounts of the same story about, I think, Gilgamesh and the flood. Various changes. So it showed that Samaria didn't care so much about a lot of these cultures actually didn't care so much about preserving the story as much as telling a story that was good for the cultural time, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
My point is, like nowadays, storytellers will change the story to make it more exciting, or especially we see it a lot in Hollywood today. They will sometimes change stories to get across a political message, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In ancient times, they did that too with their religion. And we have proof of that for some religions, Samaria being one of them, where we see different stories changing to kind of promote a political importance or a political narrative or even a religious narrative that they wanted to promote at the time. And that's why these myths and these origins can be very difficult to really come by. So you've really got to try to understand and try to figure out how culture and times managed to change these myths and what they may have been reflecting of the culture and the time period of which it was spawned. Like I said, Medusa's weird. But yeah, I do think though that corpses have something to do with Medusa's origin. It's just the extent that is up for debate. And the fact is, we're never going to know. But it's an interesting debate topic, if you ask me. But of course, I think that. But what do you guys think so far? I can hear the wheels in your head, Shadow R. Fox, trying to work this out. Zed, have we just bored you to tears?
Huh?
Have we just bored you to tears with this?
Oh, I'm sorry. I just woke up. What happened? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
That was good. I like that, though. But seriously, what do you think about the Medusa myth? After like having all this stuff forcibly shoved in your head just now.
I think I need a beer, except I don't drink beer.
Don't even know where to start.
Oh.
I get that. Like, because Shadow R. Fox, you and I both have a soft spot for Greek mythology and its intricacies and everything else. So
I'm thinking, what if it was whoever made this original myth was really pissed off because a cute Greek girl would not go out with him, so he decided to turn her into a horrible monster. That makes so much sense right now.
I mean, honestly, that does kind of make sense.
That actually could be it.
I think we just discovered the secret of the Medusa myth. I think someone was simping for a very hot woman, and he just couldn't get her. And this all devolved into I can't do revenge porn, but I can make a horrible tale about her.
You know what? Even further, when you think about the rape, in his mind, the guy she probably left him for would probably be some rich seafaring guy who owned a lot of ships.
Yeah.
Oh my god, this actually makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense. I think that because notice how the original author, there's nothing like, there's so many different variations on this, but the one thing they always have in common: beautiful woman turned into a monster. And that's like, and then I started thinking about it. Wait a minute. People always say, "Oh, this is main oppression of women." And I'm like, wait a minute. Wheels are turning. Main oppression of women, beautiful women, but becoming a monster after a while. I'm like, how many guys go out with a beautiful woman and it's like, oh no, she's a monster. She's a horrible monster.
I mean, especially, I mean, if you're in the dating world, ladies, no offense, but a lot of the times the really beautiful ones can turn into horrid monsters.
And then Percy is slaying the monster can possibly be like, oh, that's the jackass who ended up with the woman I should have been with, but she was such a bitch. No. I think we just discovered it. Let me tell you the story about this bitch named Medusa.
In a way, this might make sense.
I can see a guy going, gather around the campfire, kids. Let me tell you about a bitch named Medusa.
Oh man, could you imagine like the history going, like these two meeting up in the afterlife going, you turned me into a monster because I broke up with you?
Yes.
You were a bitch!
I think that was the story.
It is 9 p.m. and it's too early for this shit for me.
That makes the most logical sense.
It kind of does. In a weird way, it does make sense.
I think it became the world's first meme. It blew up so much. That's why they put statues of it everywhere.
I mean, yeah, we've seen that in modern day where like celebrities can make a weird face and it just goes everywhere. It's not impossible.
Look at Pepe the Frog. We see his face everywhere.
Oh god, we might have just found the origin of Medusa.
The first meme. The first Greek meme.
The first simp story.
The first simp. Oh, yes.
Wow. No, in all seriousness, that actually could be part of it with the corpse head.
That makes a lot of sense because the heroic, masculine, good-looking Perseus come in to conquer the woman and then get another woman.
That's true. I mean, again, it makes sense.
And he present Medusa to another person.
Well, remember in the original myth, he presented the head to the king who was trying to marry his mother.
Yes, who died after coming. So he passed one evil woman to another man and killed that man with that evil woman.
Damn. Well, congratulations, Shadow R. Fox. You might have solved mythology.
First the Beast of Troy? I figured out it was upside down alligator skull, and now with this one,
I would give you credit on that one. That one looks pretty damn close.
That one was very convincing.
No, it seriously was.
I can't remember which episode that was though.
That was
because I've been trying to figure out like why were we talking about the Beast of Troy?
Oh crap! When were we doing that?
Yeah, it got you too because I've been trying to figure that one out for a while now.
I think it was an episode of Dragons. Like
okay, probably Dragon Part 1 or 2. Because
I'm pretty sure everything possibly imaginable happened in those parts. Because aren't there 5 of them?
Full. Because Part 3 is Asian Dragon. Part 4 is African.
Okay.
But Part 1 and 2 are the ones that I think was just Dragon in general. I think Part 1 maybe.
I'm sure we talked about everything in all 4 of those collectively.
It was the one with Saint. I think it was the one with Saint George. So I think it was Part 1.
Was it? Well, no, didn't we cover? No, that might have been.
It may have been Part 2, but I know it's either Part 1 and 2. Then if it's Dragons.
Yeah, if it was Dragons, it was one of the earlier parts.
Because
God, we've covered a lot of monsters.
I think that makes sense. I think Medusa's the
Yeah,
world's
but
first simp story that became a meme.
I think so too. Yeah, because I think it was in the first part of Dragons, because that's when we were covering dinosaur bones as a possible like source for it. So it's probably in one of the Dragon episodes.
Because I'm calling this now. Medusa is either the Greeks' version of a pinup girl, or
Which
it's the biggest simp story of all time.
one of the two. I mean, I could see that.
And just being so angry with that woman that is like, yeah, no, don't go there. There's a Medusa there. Turn you to stone, the damn viper. That it makes so much
I
sense.
mean,
Calling a woman a snake or a viper now.
I think they're like between the two of them. I think there actually might be some morsel of truth in this.
I think we just found the world first simp story.
I mean, we might have in a way, like especially like it could have been that the image of the Gorgon was already used, and he just added to it, turning about. Oh yeah, you see that image? That's what she looked like,
The
or that's what she
cold-hearted
turned
bitch.
into. Exactly.
I can just see an angry person at a campfire just saying that.
I mean, especially if they're drunk, I could definitely see them saying that, like in a bar, washing away their sorrows. Yeah, 100%. I could see this.
Because now I'm thinking of how they told the original tale. One, the big thing the storyteller would do would use the phases of the moon during the time of Perseus stealing the eye from the witches to represent which witch who he stole the eye from at the time.
We're not sponsoring the sandwich place, which, by the way.
Yeah, which. Because now I'm trying to think. Is there a way this all could be possibly?
I mean, might be.
Oh, I'll think of something with Perseus.
Yeah, because I've actually looked this up. They don't think that Perseus was a historical figure, but I feel like he had to be based on someone.
He's the guy who got Medusa.
There you
He's
go.
the guy who slept with Medusa, apparently, who pissed off the simp who made the story.
In your head canon.
I mean, it makes so much sense, though. It's like, why else do you demonify a woman, but still regard her as beautiful?
That's true. That is very true. So, well, that's all I've really got.
I mean, with
I think we've used every image of Medusa, and Perseus that there is, except for one, which I didn't want to put on here just because I think it's stupid. Which is actually one where Medusa is holding Perseus' head, which is actually a overly feminist statue, which basically is just men hating feminists. So, yeah, I didn't care about posting that one. Mostly because she's not that good looking in the picture anyway.
I'm just not thinking about. I'm just thinking about.
I know, we've got you stuck on the first simp story.
It makes it. It's all fit together at that point. Then this jackass Perseus came along and stole her away, and then he ditched her for someone else. But I'm not gonna pay that child support, so.
Nice. Well, I think that's all we have to cover on Medusa. Unless, Zed, do you want to add anything to this?
No.
You're just begging for this to end at this point, right?
Yes. Missed the
I
part
understand.
earlier where I said it's 9 p.m.
Yeah, no, I didn't miss that.
And apparently I've turned into a 60-year-old man.
We all have. Shadow our Fox, you remember 60? Those were our younger years.
I stopped counting.
At 60 or 80?
Again, I stopped counting after 21.
You still remember 21?
I stop at. That's when you stop.
I stopped at 15.
No, you gotta get well, you get 21 because that's when
What?
you.
I had no benefit at 21, okay?
Technically, 26 is the last one, I think.
Why 26?
Renting a car, I believe.
Oh, joy.
I think that's 25,
Is that 25?
or maybe 25 is just when auto insurance
Because
goes, your premium goes down.
yeah, maybe
So
it's
it's a great
25. Yeah.
milestone of
Hang
when you
on.
get to pay an insurance company.
That's 26. Sorry, that's 26. 26 is when you get kicked off of family health insurance, and you have to pay yourself. 25, I believe, is when you can rent a car, if memory serves correctly.
25 is renting a car. Although apparently, in some places you can rent a car if you're younger. I think you might
Yes.
just be charged an extra fee.
You'll be charged more for a deposit.
Yeah. But yeah, 25 is.
That makes sense. Okay. Before we get off into more tangents, I think we've covered as much of Medusa as we can. So remember, if you want some more information or less tangent information on Medusa, you can always check out Probable, Possible, Plausible, an explanatory guide to monsters and myth. And until then, we will see you next time where we'll be discussing Cerberus, right?
I believe it's Cerberus.
No, I'm not going to lie. You want to talk about getting off on tangents? Cerberus is one we're definitely going to get off on tangents. Because Cerberus just goes all over the place. So until then, we're your hosts, Archimage, and my other hosts.
Shadow or Fox.
And Zed.
And we will see you next time.
See ya.
Later.